the operation started small. It started in a trailer, and then eventually went into a greenhouse, and now we are a sprawling facility over multiple acres, and it's all done in greenhouses, and we are easily over 3 million gallons of phytoplankton. In fact, we just added 2 new greenhouses full of, I'd say, at least 250,000 gallons, because the demand for algae has gone up significantly. And the reason why it's gone up is because now people can buy it instead of growing it, or they can grow it and maybe not grow, as much as they need, and just buy it from us to make up for what they can't grow. And so there's this kind of thing that has happened where people have discovered us over the years, and they're like, look, I can buy this algae from them. I can feed it to my larval oysters, let's say, or my oyster broodstock. And I don't have to grow the stuff. I can put it in a freezer, or I can put it in a refrigerator and just use small amounts of it, because it's incredibly concentrated. We're talking upwards of billions of cells per milliliter. It's that concentrated. And so these people were, these aquaculture operations were able to expand their operations because they could just keep buying the algae and buy more of it instead of expanding their algae culture operation. There's also companies that have begun what they're doing with us in mind. Instead of growing the algae, they're not going to grow any algae. They're just going to be like, we're going to buy it from you guys. We're going to buy enough to store it for months, years, whatever, it depends on the shelf life, and use it to feed our animals. And in a lot of cases, these people go through seasonality issues. So there's spawning events. There's temperature that they can't control. Some of these facilities are near coastal waterways. They're near, bays and sounds and things like that, where they don't have control over the weather, or they're near the equator where they can't really afford to keep a giant facility climate controlled year round. So if they have electricity and they have a freezer and or a refrigerator, then they can store our products, instead of having these giant climate controlled facilities and all these people to run the stuff, and all this waste that's generated when you grow algae, and all the fertilizers and the contamination threats and all of it. They can just skip all that. So we have actually helped companies become larger with their operations. We've helped companies come into this without having to grow any algae. And so we've helped to accelerate global aquaculture with this. It's just remarkable. I mean, what we're working with are just the primary producers. We're not the ones that put the oyster on your plate at the restaurant. We have nothing to do with that, except for the fact that our algae is fed to those animals that are then presented to you, at a restaurant or at a market. So it's really cool that we're part of that. It's just amazing. People are eating oysters that were fed our algae in Turkey, in South Korea, in the Maldives. Just you name it. It's really cool that these things are happening, and we're a part of that. And the only way to do that is to grow copious amounts of phytoplankton, and deal with all the seasonality issues that we have to deal with. Luckily, we're in an area where we have abundant sunshine. We have very mild seasonal shifts. We have very few freezes. There's no snow. We're in kind of a drought area, so there's not a whole lot of rain. We do have a rainy season, but typically it's not significant. It has been lately, which has been really challenging. And so we can be consistent. We can grow our species of algae consistently all year round. And what we do is basically what we have is continuous cultures. And so the algae is literally being harvested all day long, every day. The water that it's growing in is recycled through a giant water treatment plant that we basically created ourselves, based on, water treatment plants that handle wastewater for cities for drinking water, or wastewater for aquaculture facilities. We learned a lot from these people, using things like heating the water up to a certain temperature to kill bacteria, pasteurization. We use UV irradiation. We use ozone. We use foam fractionation. We go to great lengths to sterilize that water before it comes back into the culture, because what we don't want is any of, all this water comes from different cultures. And so it's all coming together and getting filtered. What we don't want is for one of those algae species to survive all of that, and then get into all of our cultures and basically ruin the entire operation like that. It's pretty catastrophic when it happens to one of our ponds. I mean, we're not immune to this kind of thing. It does happen from time to time, whether it's user error or some failure in filtration, where maybe a solenoid didn't turn off at the exact time that the temperature dropped too low. All these little things. that we're constantly keeping our eyes on. So we filter the water, we keep everything nice and clean, and we recirculate it. And that way we have very little waste when it comes to our water. We're not just culturing the algae and then dumping the water, into a field or something.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. We're bringing it right back. We also make our own salt blend. We buy all the raw ingredients and make our own stuff, because algae they have different needs than our fish do and our corals do. You would not, the fish and corals would die really quickly in the water that we grow our stuff in, because there's low pH, high pH in some of the systems. We pump tons of nitrogen into these systems to feed them nitrogen. We pump tons of carbon dioxide into our systems to give them carbon. And then we add things like iron and trace metals and minerals and things like that. All the stuff that's, fertilizer, basically, all the things that algae needs to grow and multiply itself.
Well, because you want the most control over everything that's happening, right? Because you're growing certain species, certain types of things in each of these ponds and stuff. So having that control, you're not trying to like have a whole aquarium. You're growing phytoplankton.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Keeping everything compartmentalized, keeping it separated is paramount for us. And that brings up a topic. We're growing multiple species of algae. We're growing zooplankton, rotifers, copepods. We're bringing in frozen products and other things from external sources like brine shrimp and mysis shrimp and the copepods that go into our arctopods. We don't grow those. Those are harvested. And so we have to keep all of these things separated. And what we do is we have a mindset and a philosophy, and we apply techniques that are all for biosecurity. So biosecurity is basically the prevention of outside agents from entering a farm or facility, and also to prevent things from spreading within your facility to each other, to each culture. And so biosecurity is something, when I came on board 15 years ago, I was like, we need a biosecurity plan. We need a mindset. We need all the employees to think about biosecurity as much as they possibly can. It's not something that you wake up in the morning and drink your coffee and go, all right, what biosecurity do I need to consider today? We put signs up. We have critical control points where certain people are only allowed to be. And we have signs that say, biosecurity, this area, you could cross-contamination threat here, certain personnel only allowed, no bringing in tools, no bringing in carts, no dogs, stuff like that. So what it is basically there are three principles, and I don't have them memorized, so I'm going to read them really quickly, but I think it's important because biosecurity is important, not just to us, but to you guys. I mean, you guys know about coral pathogens and parasites and things. And these are things that coral farmers and people who are serious about this, even hobbyists, have to keep in mind. They have to know about these things. Luckily, the education is huge on coral pathogens and fish pathogens and parasites. So the hobbyists are a lot better educated these days. But basically, we're looking to bio-exclude, so prevent outside agents from entering the farm or facility. We're looking for biomanagement, the way in which spread is prevented within the farm or facility, and then biocontainment. And so procedures in place to stop the spread of disease to the outside world, or the threat of contamination to the outside world. That's something that we really don't, at our facility, need to worry about because we're inland. And so there's really no way our marine phytoplankton and marine copepods are going to get into let's say the local ponds or a local river or stream. They're not going to survive that. There's no way. And so, yeah, being landlocked also helps us to prevent any contamination that could come from the ocean, because, we're near-ish to the coast of California, but we're inland far enough that isn't a threat. And so some of the things that we take seriously at our farm are personnel. So the people that work at the farm that deal with the algae, deal with the cultures, deal with administrative things, bookkeeping, stuff like that. They are all aware that they are a vector of contamination. They can have contaminants on them and not even know it, and then contaminate our systems accidentally. And so what we do is we identify things that they can bring in and how they can bring them in. Let's say, since we're, near the ocean, let's say we have an employee that commutes to work, lives on the coast, and surfs every day. Now, if that employee wants to go surfing the morning before coming to work, that person needs to come home and shower thoroughly and leave the wetsuit and the surfboard and everything, at home, and not bring it with them to work that day. In fact, we prefer that nobody goes surfing or fishing before coming to work. But if they do, they know that they're supposed to be in clean clothing, completely showered, completely cleaned, and not have like the wetsuit, sitting in their car and the surfboard still in their car when they come to work. We don't want those things coming to our farm because we consider them all contaminated. The other thing is we don't really like anybody to go to a public aquarium or an aquaculture facility or even a pet store before coming to the farm. If they do, it's change your clothes, take a shower, clean up as best as you possibly can. And also the shoes you are wearing, don't wear the same shoes that you wore to those facilities. Wear something that's completely different than what you had on. And so these are things that we take very seriously. We also don't allow pets, dogs. Dogs are not allowed at our farm because dogs can go off leash and just start roaming around, sticking their nose in everything, getting contaminants on their hair, on their fur, shaking that stuff off into other areas of the farm, and just they can wreak havoc in a matter of hours. And so that's something we take into consideration. And we assume that everybody that's coming to the farm is contaminated. They know, especially the employees, how to clean themselves, and where they need to be and where they shouldn't be. And so this all just protects our assets, protects our asses too. But it's like this is our livelihood. So Tim Reed and his wife and his kids and his family and the board members are, like, a lot of them are his friends and family. They own this company, and if we get contaminated to the point where we're completely wiped out, they lose too. They lose, we lose, I lose. The lowest paid employee goes home. We're all unemployed. Poof, done, game over. This kind of thing happened in the shrimp industry with white spot disease. Yeah, anybody listening should look that up. It was devastating to the shrimp farming industry globally. These shrimp would die within days. Entire farms would be completely wiped out in days. And people that own the farm to the people that mowed the lawn in between the ponds, everybody was unemployed suddenly. And this was something that completely took over and wiped out the global shrimp farming. And luckily that's since bounced back, and they have very strict biosecurity rules in place now. There are entire continents, countries that have biosecurity plans in place that are incredibly strict. Australia is one of them. I can't get anything alive into Australia. Forget about it. I have to instruct them, say, look, if you guys have rotifers in Australia or copepods that you can collect on your own coastal waterways, you guys are going to have to do that because I can't ship you a rotifer. We just can't do it. The Australian government does not want to risk those contaminants coming into their country, even though they still have boats coming in and ballast water and that. Can't really do much about that. I mean, I know that they can disinfect ballast water and things like that, or but it's hard to keep everything out. And so a lot of times biosecurity is a mindset, and there's things you can practice, but it's mostly a mindset. What am I touching? What did I put my hand in? And now what am I doing next, kind of thing.
So if for say you did have like a specific system or something get contaminated, do you have like a backup to reset that system? Or
right? Yeah, we have redundancies built into place. So the algae is cultured in compartments. So we have multiple compartments where our algae is grown in. And even within the species, they're grown in different compartments. The copepods are grown in separate tanks that are not connected to a sump. They are independent systems. And so if one of them has a contaminant, we can isolate that system or that one tank and basically, disinfect it, bleach it, nuke it, tear it down, clean everything thoroughly, and then get it back up and running. And that's, we do that from time to time. When let's say we get a rotifer in a copepod culture. We do not want rotifers in the copepod cultures because the rotifers will take them over. Rotifers are like a plague to copepod cultures. They reproduce asexually. They're cloning themselves nonstop, doubling their density every day, and they're also motoring through every chunk of phytoplankton and organic waste in those systems, completely starving out the copepods. And so if in the past, when we have found rotifers, and we haven't found them in our copepod systems in a long time, thank God, but when we have found them, that tank is immediately bleached and started over. And the other thing that's important to note is that, when people buy our products, this is something that they need to keep in mind. This is good peace of mind for our customers. It's one thing that the phytoplankton we sell is not alive. It's just incredibly concentrated, and the cells are fully intact. And it's some of the species are frozen, so freezing things, kills contaminants. So you've got that aspect with the algae. Then there's with the live copepods and the live rotifers is that we have cleaned them up to the point where it's just those animals in the culture, and that's virtually it. There are some microscopic ciliated protozoans that are really hard to eradicate completely, but we consider them as a benign contaminant. They're things we can live with. They don't reproduce rapidly. They won't take over the culture. They won't kill the copepods. They won't ruin the water quality. They won't outcompete for food, all these other things. When we go to bag and bottle our live feed organisms, we filter them. We rinse them through screens that allow all these little microscopic critters, and even any of the macroscopic critters that might be in there that we don't want you guys to have. We filter those out. We do it anyway. Even if we don't find them, we still do it. And so when you buy copepods from us, that's all you're getting in that bottle. And in most cases, with the Tigger pods being in the refrigerator, even if there was a contaminant in there, that kind of environment for that kind of contaminant that's thriving maybe in one of our systems is not a good environment for that thing. And it would probably be amazing for people to take a microscope and go through your sediment substrate, the muck in your systems, and look at it under the microscope. You'd be amazed what you would find. There's all kinds of worms and ciliated protozoans and all kinds of little critters that live in your systems you don't even know about. And so what we don't want to do is help introduce something that you don't have and something that may be harmful. And that's the other thing, is also part of our biosecurity, is that we don't work with fish and we don't work with corals. We don't have anything to do with any of that. And so there's no way that you could get a pathogen from us. There's no way you could get a coral eating flatworm. We don't have them. Those things need hosts, and we don't have the host. And so, and even with the frozen stuff that we bring in, we don't even allow it to come to the farm. We have a completely separate kitchen it's basically like a food grade facility, where we process those things and put them into bottles. And then those bottles are disinfected. Then they come into our shipping cooler and get stocked and then get ready to be sold. And then the person that deals with those, at the end of the day, after they're done doing that, they go straight home. They don't go back into the farm and work with the algae or do this and that. They're done for the day. And so basically our most sensitive room in the facility is our backup cultures. It's in a climate controlled room under positive pressure. We have a laminar flow hood to do all of our inoculations. And, we filter the air. Everything is just sterile. And then, so that's our most sensitive room. That's our most sensitive area of the company. And then our most least sensitive, the dirtiest part of the company, we would consider shipping. That's where all of our products, everything comes together in its packaged form, and then it's thrown together in a box and then sent off to the shipper. And so we consider that to be the dirtiest area of our facility. And like I said, it's just only a handful of us that do the growing, that do the farming. The rest of the employees just stay out of those areas unless they have a clipboard and some information, some data points that they need to write down and put them into a computer. Other than that, nobody goes near the growing areas.
Gotcha. Very specific jobs for each person in each area.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like we've got a rotifer guy, and he does our rotifers first thing in the morning. He comes straight in and does the rotifers, bags up whatever we need for the week, does the harvest, counts them, gets their food set up, and then he goes to a less clean job. And let's say he goes to bottling one of our products in our external facility. And so he comes out of the cleanliness to the dirtier areas, so to speak. And he's not allowed to come into the copepod areas. He's not allowed to go into the algae areas, and he knows that. It's totally like, it's all clear. And I do biosecurity presentations for all new employees, regardless of who they are. If there's somebody just answering phones to help customers, they got to get this presentation, because you just have to have it in your mind. And so that we're all protected.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to know at such a large scale. I mean, providing for not only hobbyists, but like everything out there, basically. Yeah, it's super, super important.
One more question I have is, I mean, you guys deal with a lot of different species of like phytoplankton, I'm assuming, obviously. Do you keep every specific species separate before like packaging them into the bottle? Or do you grow the different species together with the phyto? Or
Right. Yeah. When it comes to phytoplankton, you cannot successfully grow multiple species together in the same culture.
Yeah.
Because one of them is going to win out over the others. It always is the case. There might be one that is the dominant and then one that's barely hanging on by a thread in the culture. Sometimes that happens. So all of our cultures are species separated completely.
Okay.
Starting in our test tubes in our phytoplankton lab, all the way up to the large cultures that we're harvesting every day. Now we also have we got our cultures from a place I think it's in Connecticut, that is kind of like, it's like a seed bank, but it's for phytoplankton. It's a phytoplankton bank. They have phytoplankton that has been collected and separated and cultured from all over the world. And we're talking species that are found in different areas of the world that have different needs. And some of the wildest, like phytoplankton that's bioluminescent, diatoms of all shapes and sizes, things like that. So this place is basically our ultimate backup. And so if we were to have something catastrophic happen to us, like a fire, like an earthquake and a fire all at the same time, that just wipes out all of our cultures, luckily we have insurance for those kinds of things, but we can go to these people and say, look, we want to get our cultures back, because they're basically the same exact thing that we're culturing already. So we would go to them, get these cultures back, get back up and running. I hope to God that never happens, but you never know, and you've got to be prepared for anything.
Thank you so much, Chad, for jumping into the world of reef nutrition, jumping into biosecurity and how important that is to you guys over there at Reef Nutrition. That's really cool to see, because your products are affecting so many different parts of the industry, aquaculture, global aquaculture, and everything. And so biosecurity is vital to your operations. So thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and talking to us today about all that.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this video, then I know you're going to love the full podcast episode. Go ahead and click or tap your screen to watch that. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing, and I will see you next time on the Coral Reef Talk.